Hi guys, this is my participation for the forum Seminario, Enseñanza en Inglés, based on the action-oriented approach and the videos that we saw. So since we don't have a lot of time, I'm going to start with the outcomes. So the outcomes were developed and were presented and introduced at the beginning of the class. And I think that that's the importance of the achievement of the outcomes. This is an underlying process that creates independence on the students because the idea of the outcomes is that the students can have a path to go and complete the final task, the completion task. So actually, we saw in the video that the outcomes were introduced at the beginning of the class without any problems in a really comfortable way with the students to have an idea of what the class is going to be about. Then, well, the language skills that I considered were used the most, the listening part and the speaking part. And I think that here we have a connection between these two skills. In the listening part, we have a lot of repetition by the teacher, and in the speaking part, we have a lot of repetition by the students. We have a lot of commands, we have some prompts. So the listening part leads the speaking part. The listening part from the teacher to the students, and the speaking part from the students to the teacher. Then we have the stages that I consider were marked in a really good example. We have the warm up with activity according with the vocabulary that the teachers were going to use. Then we have the pre-task in which we saw the introduction of the outcomes, and then the task rehearsal and the task completion. And well, we didn't see a task assignment video, but we can in-person activities that the teacher can use according with the kind of process in the class. Then we have the teaching resources. Well, in the class, we saw a lot of flashcards, visual aids. We saw a lot of incomplete sentences in these flashcards, in pictures, also some kind of grammar instructors. And well, I think that the use of these resources um, was completely achieved and successfully achieved. Maybe we have something to improve. Maybe it's like to give them um, more interaction with the flashcards that we are going to use. Maybe give them give them the flashcards to interact with the kind of pictures that we are going to use, the structures, the vocabulary, and also just for them to get familiarized with the kind of resources and vocabulary that we are going to use during the whole class. But I think that we saw a really good example about how to carry a lesson with teaching resources. Then we have the classroom management and the material use. So with the classroom management, I think that it was developed in a really good way. I mean, in an easygoing environment, we saw that this group um, don't have a lot of maybe a lot of students, and also that this group um, were totally active during the lesson. So we saw that the students participated a lot with the repetition prompts, with the flashcards, with kind of resources, and we didn't see like any problem with the classroom management. I think that the teacher carried out the lesson in a really good and easy environment. Then we have the digital resources. Well, in the class, I didn't see any digital resources, but I think that it is because of the time that we have, since we have two different settings, a private and public system. So I think that it is easier for the private part to use a lot of digital resources because of the amount of lessons and the exposition to the language that the students have. In the public system, I think that it is totally comprehensible that it is kind of hard to use this kind of resources. Not impossible because of the time. It is really complicated. So I didn't see any digital resource in the class, but I think that it is totally comprehensible because of the time and also because the idea of giving us um, a perspective about what the action-oriented approach is about. Then we have the assessment part. Well, we didn't see an assessment video. We saw a lot of formative assessment and a lot of help provided by the teacher, but we can infer that we can use a lot of games, role plays, answering questions according with the student's age. I think that games and role plays, um, these kind of activities should be attached to the skills of the students. But I think a really good example and a really good idea to implement assess in the assessment task, um, answering questions. So answering questions we can use in the assessment part to maybe just to be sure that the students are developing the structures, the vocabulary, and the different content in a really good way, that they are not struggling in a certain point. So to sum up, I think that we had a really good example about what class with the action-oriented approach is about. We saw how the outcomes are attached to the different stages, and also how these outcomes try to implement uh, independence on the students. Also, we saw a lot of control activity at the beginning and how this process is carried out until the point that the students can develop activities by themselves in the task completion free activities. So and also really important is the also that we saw the implementation of the resources attached to the outcomes in the different stages and kind of formatting assessment that we can have and the process itself of the action-oriented approach. So I want to end with a quote by Phil Collins that says, "In learning you will teach, and in teaching you will learn." So thanks so much, and see you soon.